The program of today will be a presentation by Arvea MARIENI. I'll introduce her later. And then we will have a short news from our clubs. The president, Fabrizio Gallotti of our club, as you know, it's not able to participate. So we will have a welcome by our vice president, Cristian.
Hello to all, dear friends. I'm happy to see you connected today. I bring you the greetings of our president, Fabrizio Gallotti, whose health conditions are improving, even if it do not really allow yet to await his Rotary duties. Never as in this moment, the friendship we carry on in our quadrangle is a value that must inspire our lives and Rotarian action in general. Each club has its own difficulties, increased by the particular historical period we are experiencing. As for our Tivoli club, global and special events have ensured that the need for a generational change has therefore become urgent, always keeping in mind the inestimable value that older members can still give to the club. We will therefore apologize for all this reason if in this social year we will not be able to participate with the usual strength in common events. I leave the floor to the other presidents, whom I greet with a fraternal embrace, and thank you again for your participation.
Thank you, Cristian. If the other presidents wants to say very fast hello to everyone, then we can start with the introduction and the presentation of Arvea. We might start with Martin, just with a very fast hello and.
Greetings from Maidenhead. It's delighted to see so many people here on the call. I'm looking forward to the meeting and hearing what's been going on at the various clubs, and looking forward to hearing from our speaker as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Then please, Karl.
Yeah, so warm welcome here from our friends in Bonn. So it's good to see you all, and I'm looking forward to the meeting today. So back to you.
Thank you, Karl.
Gilles, tu peux m'aider dans la traduction un peu là?
Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire, Jean-Manuel?
Oui, l'introduction, en résumé, qu'est-ce qu'il a dit exactement?
Alors, juste, il demande que les présidents disent un petit bonjour simplement.
Ah, ok.
En français aussi, c'est bien. Hein?
We are very enjoyed to discuss with you, and we presented at the end of the meeting the realization of Saint-Cloud, and I like here what you do for the others, and it's very interesting. The meeting is very interesting and give us a lot of ideas to make better.
Thank you, Jean-Manuel. Okay. Now, we have the pleasure to have today with us Arvea MARIENI. First, she's Rotarian, and this is important to say, and she will give us a speech on accelerating ecological transitions and strategic autonomy, Europe at crossroads. Arvea is a German-based Italian entrepreneur. She's a strategy advisor and innovation manager specializing in Europe-China environmental cooperation. She's also partner and board member of management advisory company Brains Capital Benefit Company. And among many other things that you will find in the curriculum vitae, which I attached to the invitation, very long, interesting. She's also, since 2020, she provides also strategic guidance and advice to the Resilience Frontiers initiative within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So she's moving around Europe, and she's working on important items, and she's very interesting to listen to. So please, Arvea, it's to you.
Thank you very much. Bonsoir à tous. Comme je vous ai dit, je vous parle de Bruxelles ce soir. I'm in Brussels at the moment, and I'm based in Bonn. So I had the pleasure already to meet our friends in Bonn, and I'm thanking Bonn Sud for their welcoming hello in the city and a beautiful dinner. I welcome Tivoli. I'm thanking Tivoli very much for the invitation, and of course all the other clubs and paris for the occasion to get to know you. So this evening I'm going to use slides that I've actually presented during a speech that I was asked to deliver by the German, by the think tank of the German Ministry of Defense. It's called GIRAUD, German Institute for Defense and Strategic Studies. Why am I doing that? Because the kind of talk that we're going to have this evening, which is not meant to deliver any special, I would say, it's not about my vision, it's about throwing ideas for trying to think together about the acceleration that we are through at the moment. Because the Ukrainian-Russian crisis can be, of course, analyzed from a lot of different perspectives, and the security and defense perspective is definitely absolutely predominant at the moment. But we also know that we are in a time in which we are facing several existential threats and fundamental threats and changing in our structure and the economic structure globally. And we are in a digital revolution, we are facing an industrial revolution, and especially we have decided collectively to move towards a post-fossil economy. And this is not going to happen peacefully, and this is not going to happen easily. It needs a lot of international cooperation, and we see that international cooperation on rewriting the fundamental rules of the economies, of the global economy, is not going to be an easy task. If we think of, this is a slide that explains why I'm here invited to talk, to try and discuss with you. This is a picture in which I'm represented with the Special Climate Envoy of China, with the former lead Italian climate negotiator and other people in China. And this is an article that I've written for China Daily, commenting on COP26. Obviously, I'm European, and the reason why I work a lot and speak to our Chinese friends is because they are important, as the current crisis is evidently demonstrating once again. There is basically no other power nowadays that can actually stop the conflict in Russia. I would certainly be interested in hearing from the military person who was, I saw someone from speaking from the Ministry of Defense in Berlin. And there is obviously an international attention and a call for the Chinese government to step in and to use their influence and their power to call upon Putin to stop this aggression. And we see that the Chinese are at the moment as hesitating between different options for a number of reasons that we do not want to discuss at the moment. The most interesting thing that I would like to start with is I'm going to read you a comment made by Svitlana Krakowska. She is a climate scientist who was heading the Ukrainian delegation during the last week's meeting on Friday of the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, which obviously was about to present and publish the last report, an absolutely damning report, telling us once again that we are running short of time for avoiding climate disaster. And she said that the Ukrainian invasion is linked to the country, the effects of climate change on the country and on Russia. And that is a concept that has been repeated over the past few days, also by the Secretary General of the United Nations, saying that those two crises have the same roots, and those are fossil fuels. What does it mean? It means that you're talking about a country, Russia, which has got an economy that is probably similar to that of Holland or Italy. And it's certainly not an economic power anymore, by no means. If we're comparing their economy to the economy of the United States, clearly, which are still the first and dominate, like the dominant economy globally, but they are going to be soon overtaken by China, probably by 2025 or 2020 or 2030, depending on the scenarios. And you're talking about a country which is definitely dependent wholly on fossil exports. 1/3 of the capacity of the imports, the currencies, the balance, the trade balance of Russia is depending on fossil. And they see this is going to be drained for a number of decisions that we are taking and that are absolutely compulsory. And at the same time, the same country is affected badly by the effects of climate change. Temperature, Russia is warming 2.8 times faster than the global average, because you know that the effects of climate change are localized and different in different regions. And this is causing something which is extremely dangerous for them and for us as well, which is the thawing of permafrost. And where permafrost thaws, you got infrastructure collapsing. And this is not only civil infrastructure, but this is also strategic infrastructure such as oil pipelines, such as military structures, such as defense capabilities. And permafrost is 65% of Russian soil and landmass. And the costs that are being caused by this effect are growing and becoming unmanageable. You remember or might not have noticed that in August 2021, the Russian president said that the scale and nature of disaster that had been happening during a few months in the summer was absolutely unprecedented. And it was basically being called by local administrators, as mayors, to provide help to face the huge and devastating fires, which had been burning thousands of kilometers of forest or floods. And this is something that is common to Russia and to the United States, or to China as well. And that is exactly what I'm trying to point out today. We are in a situation in which we are facing resource stress on resources, and we are in a situation in which we are going to be unable to tackle this threat without cooperation. But at the same time, all the reflexes of all power politics are resource-facing, because whenever you got limited resources, and we're talking about fundamental resources such as, for instance, a degrading capability of producing food. I mean, climate change and is affecting water availability, is affecting productivity of agricultural systems. The biological crisis, biodiversity crisis, means that entire areas are losing their, for instance, topsoil. The World Alimentary Fund thinks that forecasts that 60% of the topsoil on which the agricultural output globally depends is going to be lost by 2060. We also have an adaptation. We're going to go back to the slides. And we are going, we also have an adaptation here, adaptation strategy, which has been presented by the, issued by the hello? Hello?
Don't worry, don't go ahead.
Okay, you're by the European Parliament, and the effects that are expected on Europe are extreme. I would suggest that you all read it, and about 40% of European population is going to be living in conditions of water scarcity. So when we realize that, we have to look from a strategic point of view, and that was the question that the GIDS, the German Institute for Defense and Strategic Studies, was asking me. Is that something that the Chinese really consider from their perspective and take into account in deciding what is going to be the rationale for their decision? Because it does make a difference. How do they react to that? Because we got a problem, for instance, of tension in terms of fundamental access to raw materials and strategic materials and rare earth, which are the components or the elements on which the energy transition is based. But we do also have, and this is an element of competition, clearly, which has always existed when you were thinking, for instance, of competition for energy resources. We also have the weaponization of current energy resources, as the Ukrainian crisis is showing. And the dependencies are an element of weakness and obviously vulnerability for every area. So we are switching from an area in which, and I see very positively the decisiveness finally of the European Union, and also some of our, I mean, collectively our member states, to finally realize that we need to stand up and to try to control our own destiny. And that means for a country like Germany, a thorough realization, a thorough change also perspective in terms of the way they've been considering their own defense and position in Europe, but also their own relationship with this giant that we got, this military giant that we got along our borders. So my answer, to be very brief, to the friends in the German Institute for Defense and Strategic Studies is yes. The Chinese have always considered climate, even before than the Europeans or the Americans, that, by the way, have come to the same realizations very recently in a, would say, political way, but from a military point of view, they always share the same considerations, because the elements and the scientific facts have always been uncontroversial, notwithstanding, I would say, the communication and narratives, which was predominant due to other factors, commercial factors, companies' policies, or even the decision of governments to put off decisions and choices that imply a change in the structure of our societies that is not easy to neither to propose, nor to present, nor to realize. So the answer is yes. And from the 80s, the Chinese were aware that their country was particularly vulnerable to all the components of the risk caused by potential collapse of climate or environmental and ecosystemic situations. And this is because of a very high number of a very, very big population, a very large population, a country which is poor in terms of agricultural possibility. They're working a lot to countervail these weaknesses, working on innovation, for instance, and utilizing massively and at scale the potential of artificial intelligence, to apply artificial intelligence also, for instance, on precision agriculture, or on in order to decrease the amount of chemicals that are used in industrial systems, or agricultural systems, to revive biodiversity, but also to ease up the stress over hydrological resources, water resources that are absolutely fundamental for a country which is very, very fragile in terms of their hydrological availability. And at the same time, you think about the potential of disruption that these are RSCP 8.5. This is one of the scenarios. Those are the codes that identify the different IPCC scenarios. We are talking nowadays, uncontroversially, of the necessity of staying under the 1.5 degrees of increase in temperature on average by 220. This is a step change. This is a real change in comparison to just a few years ago, because in 2015, when we were in Paris, when the decision makers were in Paris, the idea was to leave a space for a more gradual, a less intense reaction. And the idea was to keep it under 2, but basically scientific facts, but the acceleration of the events is demonstrating that we cannot afford that. We cannot afford that. So what is China doing in this situation? China is doing what we are doing. The picture that I show you here is courtesy of the Institute for Climate Change and Sustainable Development. This is a very important institution because it's the institution led by Xie Zhenhua. Xie Zhenhua is the climate special envoy, and Xie Zhenhua is the man who started shaping environmental and climate policies and implementation of such policies since the 80s and through the 90s. First as a ministry of level ministry, I would say, of State Environmental Protection Administration, which was not even a ministry at the time, then transformed into a Ministry of Environment and Environmental Protection in 2008. And nowadays, with the new reform of 2018 under Minister Chen Jing-ying, the Ministry of Environment and Ecology. If you look at this, you look at the same structure of the European Green Deal, because you got all the components that are considered here, from the energy matrix, which means in turn to change the way we produce, the way we consume, the way we move, transport goods, the way we operate our businesses. And this is the principle. For the first time in history, in the history of climate negotiations in 2018, 2019, the European Union decided to mainstream, this is called mainstream, environmental and climate principles into every policy sectors. The Chinese are doing the same. And this incorporation and integration is putting forward a comprehensive development strategy. This is the same sounding, I would say, slogans even, or narrative that is produced by the European Commission. This is the new growth strategy, although the word growth is being even rethought, because infinite growth, that's the point. And this is a realization that we are coming to make, even in the United States. In a finite planet is definitely not possible. With 100 billion tons per year of resources utilized at global level, that is the issue. And that comes, and from that comes the conflict and the potential for conflict, because you got this amount of exploitation of natural resources with a certain number of individuals who have access to welfare, whereas the larger parts of human population still lives in completely different situations. And you can look at that from a very simple perspective, which is the individual carbon budget. In a country like France, which has in Europe a comparatively low, I would say, carbon budget, due to the fact that, for instance, the component of nuclear energy in the electricity production system is relatively high. it's about 60%. You still, as individuals in France, every year consume between 6, if you're talking only about the the emissions that depend on goods and services produced locally, and up to 11 tons per year individually of carbon by CO2 equivalent. We're talking about all the climate greenhouse gases compared, in proportion, converted into 1 ton of CO2, which is the unit, measure of unit for global warming power gases. So 11 tons per year of CO2 equivalent is what every French person on average is using this year. And you know how much is it possible to consume or produce or emit individually by 2030 if we want to stay on the path to 1.5? It's going to be have to be cut to 3 tons. So 11 today, 3 tons per person in 2030. And this is a generational, intergenerational issue. This is a social issue because these tons correspond to levels of consumption that we have or in the way that we are built up our societies. So doesn't mean that we need to become all poor. No, because I mean, if that would be the story, probably we would ever, environmental collapse would force us at some point to change the way we live, but probably it wouldn't be possible to sell it politically. So what is happening is that this transformation is going to have to make more and with less resources, increasing massively, dramatically the efficiency, talk about autonomy in the reutilization of resources, and shortening the supply chains, because clearly transporting, avocados produced in South America to be consumed here is not necessarily extremely climate friendly. And at the same time, you start changing completely the way you do things. This is not impossible. I'm sorry for this is not impossible, but it requires a completely system change and also a different way of thinking about how to do things. It's not only about how to replace, for instance, a product with another product. It's about changing, for instance, the business models. If you're thinking in transportation in terms of local mobility, probably you will see cities moving and citizens moving not much with private transportation vehicles or transportation means, but with public transportation. You will see a displacement from, for instance, inter-European flights onto the railways, which is happening in China, which has been happening in China. You will see a different electricity grid structure, which is very important because it has to take up renewables, which are completely different from the vertical and the hierarchical, let's say, logic of a centralized point of production based on fossil, which is working in continuity. But you have got the solutions for challenging and for solving these problems. Solutions that are based, for instance, once again, on digitalization and smart grids that allow for demand side control, and for one Italian companies, for instance, world leader in that kind of solutions. And I have to say that studies even released in the United States very recently demonstrate that an integrated grid at continental scale in the United States, built with ultra high voltage transmission lines and direct current, can actually balance the grid even without having to resort to storage. And this is a bit one of these, I would say, fetish that we had I mean, I'm not saying the storage is not necessary, but way less according to studies than we expected it to be. And probably we expected it to be, or we wanted to say that it was necessary, also because dismantling these concepts means to dismantle the financial infrastructure that we have behind fossil fuels, which is very understandable. And that's why I think that the situation that is happening now in Russia might actually be an accelerator, an element of acceleration for this process. For the first time, gas, which was considered to be a transition fuel in a very inappropriate way, because gas is actually has got a global warming power, methane, 80 times, over 80 times higher over 20 years than CO2. So we would be really in a bad place if we would be investing in gas infrastructure now. Well, this is the first time that I see countries that are heavily dependent on gas, such as Italy, recognizing, and I was having this conversation yesterday with someone who's got an extremely relevant position within the Ministry of for the ecological transition of Italy. Well, for the first time in my life, I've heard this person telling me, "You're right, I hear you, I know gas is not going to be there." So this is a sudden change, an acceleration point that might challenge the way we've been doing things profoundly. And that's why I think for the past 20 years, and that's a bit of a provocation, for the past 20 years, we've been converging on environmental standards very much with China, to the point that, for instance, China's got today the largest carbon market, which was built upon the model of the European ETS, the emission trading system. And convergence has happened in the fields of standards for instance, circular economy. We have standards for a number of technologies. And we're even discussing institutionally about, for instance, the BAT system, the BAT BREFs, which are the best available techniques reference documents that are basically those documents that within the whole of the European Union are always necessary if you want to open an industrial plant. So Europe has chosen to enhance its legislation, because it's also a way to strengthen our industry and to make our industry more competitive. We are going to have an advantage. We are going to have an advantage. This slide is interesting because it's been produced as a 1.5 degree scenario for China by the Institute for Climate Change and Sustainable Development. And this is an indication of the kind of mitigation actions. Mitigation means to reduce the emissions. Then you got a part of the work for climate policy, which is called adaptation. That's another story. And this is something that we don't see in the 14th five-year plan. And we still don't see in the plans that are starting to be specified. But, you know, Chinese have got this habit to promote, to under-promise and to over-deliver. And that's something that they have been doing quite constantly when it comes to climate policy. And if you look at the huge amount of installations of renewables that have been built in 2021, and we're talking about hundreds of gigawatts, you just have to consider that to go to the achieve the goal 2030 for Italy, you need 75 gigawatts of additional renewables installed. The Chinese last year, I think they got to 500 gigawatts only 1 year. Now, what do we want to do? Obviously, there are many issues that we should open and discuss if we were thinking about the reliance on coal. I'm not picturing everything as like the perfect.
We need to give a slot for questions. Just.
I think I can stop here. I just wanted to give this idea of the urgency, the idea of the necessity to change, the idea of doing that together, and the risk for conflict, and how we manage this at international level. Because if we try to do it alone, conflicts will arise even more violently, and we are faced with basically no choice. This is what John Kerry, which is not like a member of the Communist Party of China, says. He even said, when we need to go to war against the Soviets, against Hitler, even an alliance with the Soviets is possible. And that's a bit what we are facing now. So this is a bit of a provocation. I would like to have your reaction.
Wow. It's you give us many things to think about, really. These numbers are quite impressive, and probably we have to work on them. There will be a lot of work in the next years, and really to reduce from 11 tons to 3 or 4 tons per person is quite a heavy duty. So please, if anyone, do the referees of the clubs have questions?
I've had none sent to me.
No, I don't have any question directly, but I'm sure that some members, French member, would like to ask questions. If they just open their mic, then probably will have a question to.
Jacques Rigaud is ready to ask.
Well, first, I would like to thank Arvea for this very interesting proposition, and I've been really very emotional by what you said, but there is still for me a problem. Is that what is the pragmatic way? You said, for instance, that our consumption in France was about 11 tons and should be free. How do we come to that?
How do I come with that?
How do we come, French people, from 11 to 3? What are the paths?
That is a problem for everybody. We are all in it. I mean, the United Nations Environment Program says that we need to cut emissions every year by 7.6% from 2020 to 2030. And in 2020, this is COVID. It was about a reduction of 7% of emissions. So we basically stopped our economy, okay? That's the huge challenge that we are facing. And the scenarios that we have, and this is the work that is being done by the IPCC, is the scenarios are not only scientific geophysics. They don't only take into account dynamics of ocean, of scientific, like the behavior of the planet systems, or the planetary systems, but they analyze the way societies react to changing variables. And for every single of this one of these scenarios, there are obviously a number of changes and a number of fundamental reactions. And some of these scenarios are very dramatic, because some of these scenarios say, for instance, that there will be a reaction in terms of aggressivity, that countries will go each one on their own path, trying to accumulate resources. I mean, if you think of Ukraine, is an agricultural country, is a country with a lot of resources, mineral resources, with oil. So if you look at this in that perspective, it kind of makes sense. I mean, not obviously, I don't forget all the traditional geopolitics of Ukraine in that area as a former satellite of the Soviet Union. I'm not disregarding that. I'm just saying those are layers that are coming up. So how do we do it? First of all, we have a huge number, I've got a slide actually, a huge amount of energy which is produced and consumed every year. on the fossil, obviously fossil origin, because this is the predominant source. For instance, in Europe, it's about 60% of the general energy, and electricity is only 1/3 of energy. And there is this slide which represents and is issued by the American government. Okay, so again, not by the Communist Party of China, and the energy that we effectively use out of the all energy that we produce, and is 1/3. So 70% of energy is wasted. I want not to make simplifications, okay? I'm just to give you very silly examples that are scientifically not necessarily completely correct. So you take it as with a grain of salt, but it's just to give you the amounts. Nowadays, the most efficient internal combustion engine, so the normal engines of the traditional cars that we have, can be 40% efficiency. 40% efficiency. That means that every time that I use my car, I waste 60% of the energy. And that is the first thing that we need to do. That's why I say it's a system change. In our, you have to look at the mega area, okay? Just sorry to finish with the car. The electric vehicle, the electric engine is much, much, much more efficient because it can get to up to 80%. Again, take it with a grain of salt. We are talking about the dimension, okay? So first of all, you reduce the huge amount of waste. Think about the fact that 37% of global energy emissions, global greenhouse gas emissions depend on the built environment, which means our houses, our offices, and infrastructure, okay? And about 50% of total resource consumption, and by that I say cement, I say steel, I say everything. And everything can be actually accounted for in 1 ton of CO2, because even for producing resources like cement, you can translate that into how much emissions I produce. Well, this 37% of global emissions, how much can I reduce my consumption when I, for instance, insulate my houses correctly? This is the renovation wave of the European Commission. And I can tell you one thing, the Italian government has put forward a mechanism, which is a bonus. It's a system of subsidies. They pay upfront, so the citizen does not even have us to pay under certain, you have to go through a procedure. You can apply to renovate energetically your individual home or your apartment in an apartment block. The costs are borne directly from by the state, up to 110%, okay, of what is needed. So that means that I'm doing that. And the energy modeling, which I am doing together with a French company, friends of mine, very nice French company, by the way, thank you to the French friends. Well, the result, the end result will be, and I'm not destroying the house, I'm just operating within the realm of technique and technology available. Now, we're not talking rocket science. It's going to be that I will be 85% independent. And the rest might happen to come from a backup, like gas, but just a backup. 85% independency means that my energy consumption, depending on fossil, I'm talking about the house in Italy that is where my mom lives, so it's not technically mine, but so that is one first thing, and this is what the International Energy Agency says. First thing is the energy that we do not consume, we do not produce, and we do not waste. And this is huge in our systems because our economy, and that's the same concept with the circular economy, is built on the idea of waste. Everything is produced to be thrown away. Resources are produced to be thrown away. You know how Philips started this huge in the 30s, huge market, which is the electricity bulbs. You could have made them lasting long. They just decided, yes, we will make the internal threads that, the filament more subtle, more fragile, so that they can be they break up at some point and I can sell more. Think of plastic, we are signing a treaty for avoiding plastic waste. Plastic has exploded for a very simple reason, because it was an appendix of the fossil or the oil industry. So we started producing plastic for replacing things we didn't need to replace. And plastic has turned into 40 years in a huge environmental problem, which is affecting human health and the ecosystems, to the point that we got 8 million tons of waste every year ending in the oceans. And this is because we wanted to pump in consumption. So the first thing we need to do fundamentally is not to produce to consume in that excessive way. And that is what is called what is the fundamental, let's say, truth of one of the fundamental truths of the European Green Deal, is to make the economies more efficient, to make use of resources, to design for durability, for reparability, for keeping resources in the system as long as possible. When you cannot use them anymore, you have to be able to disassemble them easily, so not to have funny things with chemicals that stay together, you cannot separate, in order for these resources, whenever possible, to go back in the cycle or to be reused. And this is a huge potential for reduction. Second, yes, there are also huge changes in behaviors, but those are not going to be imposed, because, for instance, younger generations are ditching meat, because agricultural systems, agricultural systems are a huge environmental issue, but also huge emitters. They cause deforestation, because we think of Latin America.
We have more questions.
Yeah.
We have Art is ready for a question. Please be short, Art, and because we're running out of time.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
It's very interesting.
This is the Italian part. I'm sorry.
Okay. Please, but thank you for handing over and giving me the opportunity to ask a question. First of all, thank you very much for that really impressive talk that you gave us, and I'm still struggling to digest all the information that you presented, and I'm probably going to fail by doing so. Moreover, I'm a simple-minded soldier, so that really gives me a big headache. But I think it was very much worthwhile listening in, and I'm trying to hook on one of those things that you mentioned. You alluded to China. And how China is approaching this issue, and the thing that I'm interested in is from a very broad spectrum to understand China's motivation in doing so. To give an example, my children, when they go on demonstrations for Friday for Future, they aim for a global perspective. They never think about Germany as a nation state to deal with climate change and all the things that come from it. They have a very broad picture. Whereas I would like to understand what is China's motivation. As you alluded, they do think about it and they have an agenda to approach climate change. But if that were only for national benefit, if you will, then second order effects would be quite different compared to an approach if they were motivated by global well-being. So what is it that drives Chinese intention and that drives Chinese action when approaching issues of climate change?
Okay, first of all, it's self-survival, stability of their internal society, because they see the danger. They see that the first and primary objective of the Communist Party of China is maintaining power. It is, because making the population happy or creating consensus is a necessary means to maintaining power. And in the 90s, for instance, or the early 2000s until 2005-6, you had huge demonstrations, which is very difficult to find in China, which is very rare, for environmental reasons: pollution, the quality of air, water, or alimentary problems, such as there was a case with the formula, the children formula, so chemicals. This is a question of stability. Second, is a question of resilience of society, because if you don't have food to feed 1,500,000,000 people, or you do not have enough water, it's an issue. If you're a neighbor and you're a soldier, so you saw that the basin of the in the river basin of the between Pakistan and the glacier, the third pole, is the water reservoir for over 1 billion people, and they're melting. And what happens when there is no more water, or the environments are disrupted in India or in the Himalayan or in Pakistan or in Bangladesh? It means that hundreds of millions of people will migrate. And that's the same problem for us, because when Sahel, and Sahel is a sensitive area in the geopolitical garden of Europe, has got 50 degrees temperature, then there will be hundreds of millions of people moving towards our areas. So first, the self-interest. And self-interest is something that we all have. And the problem is that it is becoming very urgent. Second, they are very, okay, we can talk about the Chinese a lot, but one thing they are is they are rational. And the system is not a personalized autocratic system like Putin. You're a soldier, you know that now, for instance, although Xi Jinping has been centralizing power over the last years, since 2012, 2015 especially, what has happened now with this huge crisis, which is very scary because we're talking about a madman thinking of using nuclear weapons in the middle of Europe, which is not very relaxing. The committee, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, 7 people at the center, 7 men, we have to say. I'm a feminist, but there are 7 men. They are re-establishing a sort of more collective analysis of what is going on. And this is the strength of the party in terms of, you know, democracies even. We work well, democracies work well when we got intermediary bodies that allow to transfer, let's say, thoughts and feelings from the basis into concepts throughout rationalization. And this is normally something parties do in our multi-party systems or in our democracies. The Communist Party of China, with all its problems, is a technocratic system where you got a lot of thinking and a lot of realizations. And in that sense, they are much more foreseeable. I take what they say because they plan ahead. I see the documents that they produce, and I know that those documents are based on analysis and scientific facts, and they are engineers mostly, or physicists. They're not I mean, they are also philosophers, but let's say that they got a different way of selecting their political class. Okay, let's put it this way: it's less random. So it's self-interest. Are they generous? And no. Are we generous? Probably no. Is there a space for idealism in international relations? I'm not sure. I think that sometimes when we try to do that, we've done a lot of damage. In general, everyone. So I would say that rational self-interest says that in a situation for facing global challenges, probably we require to work together. Is it going to be successful? I'm not sure. Maybe there will be a huge war, cannot predict. But I think that fundamentally they are worried about the increasing tensions. They consider themselves the ones who are going to take over a role of predominance. And the Americans probably share that view. Otherwise, there wouldn't be this to see it as trap. Let's put it this way. Are they going to?
We are running out of time. It's too interesting, but we have to move on because we're 20 minutes late, unfortunately.
At the end of the meeting, probably will be some time spare
Yes,
to have again a chat.
If you can stay, maybe there might be more
I can
questions.
stay. I will just move to my phone because, as I said, I didn't bring the battery for the charger for. Okay, so I switch onto the mobile phone. Okay.
Thank you. It was so interesting. There were more questions in line, but maybe later, if you're here, there might be time for that. Thank you very much. Okay, running on the rest of the program. We have the Rotary Club of Maidenhead, which will inform us about the news of the club.
Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Right, here we go. Bear with me. All right, it says only the host can share in this meeting.
Yes, now you have the cost, you are able to do that.
Right. There we go. One moment, caller, as they say. Right, can everybody see that?
No.
Not yet.
No.
No.
Right, okay. Hang on. Try again.
Yes.
Right, okay, let's try. Okay.
Oh.
Right, can you see that?
Yes.
Right,
yes.
So I'm gonna have to go back to this. Sorry. So I'd go through it because I don't know how to get back to the start. Nearly there. Right.
Right.
Here we go again. Okay, right. Can everybody see that now?
Yes.
Right, apologies for the technical problems. Right, so here's an overview of the recent activities of Maidenhead Rotary Club. It's more of a look at some of the exciting future projects we're currently working on. Following the restrictions at Christmas and the New Year due to the Omicron variant, the club has been slowly returning to a semblance of normality. We resumed face-to-face meetings at our usual venue of Desborough Bowls Club, along with our monthly family evening meetings at Maidenhead Golf Club. So, for example, just this Monday, we had an excellent talk by the Sustainability Director of Thames Water, who, much to everybody's surprise, insisted that the UK, despite being famous for its rain, is not by international standards a wet country. So we were all surprised to hear that. Who would have thought it? Moving on. While our programme of community involvement has been limited due to COVID concerns, we're now busy shaking off the lockdown lethargy with planning lots of exciting events over the coming weeks and months. Perhaps of most interest is our Quadrilateral committee, which is hard at work preparing for the return of the event in May. Here's a picture of the meals in people's homes. Eddie Clark will have a bit more to say about this. But the programme offers a fantastic opportunity to renew our international friendships, and we hope to welcome as many of you as possible to Maidenhead. In a similar vein, another project group is busy planning the return of the International Youth Project, again after a 2-year absence. In July, we'll once again be taking a group of unsuspecting teenagers for hopefully the experience of a lifetime in Snowdonia, where they'll be able to make lasting friendships and have lots of opportunities for self-development. I believe that the details have been shared with all the clubs, and we hope that you'll soon be starting your selection process for candidates. Another team is hard at work preparing our second Open Gardens events, which will be held in June. The first one last summer was a spectacular success, raising twice the expected amount of money, and we are aiming for this year to be even bigger and better. Currently, the hunt is on for more gardens to open their gates to the public during the weekend. Another club event with enormous potential for growth is the Bikeathon, a cycling event aimed at cyclists of every age and ability, from families to serious club cyclists. Planning for the event, which is held in July, is well advanced, and we've just opened registrations for it this year. It's growing in popularity every year, and we hope in time to build it into a huge event with hundreds, if not thousands, of participants. Following on from the River Thames cleanup that some of us took part in last year that I mentioned in my last presentation, there's a district-wide environment project being planned for the Thames Valley in May. And this is a perfect opportunity for our Maidenhead Club to work with the other Rotary clubs in Maidenhead. So we're joining forces to prepare a joint River Thames cleanup under the banner of Rotary and Maidenhead. Other things, in just a couple of weeks, a group of us will be joining Rotarians from across the Thames Valley for the first physical district conference since lockdown, set amongst the dreaming spires of Oxford. There's a packed programme of interesting speakers, so we hope it will be both inspiring and an opportunity to enjoy some much missed face-to-face fellowship with our Rotarians from other clubs. On the international front, we've continued support for those in need, sending shelter boxes to the Philippines, Vanuatu, and most recently Yemen. And we're obviously watching the Ukraine situation closely, and we'll support a coordinated effort from Rotary rather than sort of going freestyle and duplicating efforts. Other international news, we had a recent update on the Makindu Dental Clinic in Kenya, which the club supports, and our member Gurdeep Singh, who I think is on the call, and his family have close links with. It has resumed its fortnightly dental clinics following the pandemic. And another project that we supported in Zimbabwe is a school to pay for additional teachers through the breeding of pigs has borne fruit, or more accurately piglets, with the arrival of its first litter. And finally, you'll recall my run that for my presidential year, I set myself the challenge of running 1,000 miles for the UNICEF Yemen Crisis Appeal, whilst picking up litter to raise awareness of End Plastic Soup, the Rotary initiative. And last Sunday, I hit the 1,000 miles with 4 months to go. So I'm going to continue running for the rest of my presidential year. And we're also resuming our activities in our community. At the end of March, Rotarians from the club will be holding mock interviews with students from one of our secondary schools to help them prepare for job and university applications. So that's it, a snapshot of what we're up to at the moment. As I said, most of it's planning ahead for what we hope will be a number of successful projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Just a question for Stephan. I understand that Karl BROICH, the president, is short in time. Should he make the presentation before the Quadrilateral in Maidenhead? Stephan?
Yeah.
Stephan? Karl?
Yes, I'm online. So
Are you short in time and you prefer to talk now and then we have the
yeah, thanks, Pietro. I have to leave soon for a meeting with US FDA colleagues. So sorry for that. So I will try to be short. So here in Germany, the COVID situation is still a little bit unstable because 25% of our people are still without a vaccination. And so incidence rates are fluctuating a lot, and particularly we have 15% in the elderly of over 60, so the high-risk population without vaccination now. And that is the reason that we are still doing our meetings virtual. And we will keep that until Easter, and we will try to restart then hybrid meetings the week after Easter. So we postponed due to COVID our Christmas gala dinner. Now, after the week after Easter, we are planning our then spring welcome gala dinner. So we hope that we can make it there in person. And in 2 weeks, we are doing our so-called evenings by the fireplace. So 4 to 5 friends are meeting together casually, discussing Rotarian topics or the daily news, Ukraine, and so on. So we are doing and went on with our social program. So 2 weeks ago, we did have the practical training for work experience with some pupils, most of them with a migration background. So this has been started a few years ago by our club, and now 8 clubs of the Bonn area are working here together, and this is a big success story. So in my presidency, we started now to support a prevention program in Bonn schools with regard to pupils with psychological or psychiatric problems. Particularly in the COVID situation, this increased in the schools dramatically. Of course, we are looking to the Ukrainian situation. Our friend Eberhard Reiche from our club has concrete contacts to Odessa, and he is still in contact. So most of them were able to get out as refugees, and we will see how we can help them in the future. So we planned, I see Otto Niederhofer as incoming president. He planned a big grant internationally to Odessa, and we have to see now what will happen in the future here. So, of course, we are still rebuilding the consequences in the Ahr Valley after the devastating flood last year, with special focus for sustainable and effective support, and Axel is coordinating this topic. And after all, we are looking forward to our meeting, Quadrilateral in Maidenhead, and we are happy. So we are planning for this, and Stephan and I are optimistic that many friends from Bonn will come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we are having the presentation of Eddie. Eddie, are you going to share it, or Gianfranco?
Yes, please. Yes, if I can be able to go and share. Okay, I wanted to just briefly talk about Maidenhead and the Quadrilateral. So it's going to happen. I want to review the background very briefly. My thanks to Stephan, Gilles and Pietro, because we've been working behind the scenes to monitor the situation, because it looked very much as if we would have to cancel for the 3rd time. But the restrictions in England are now ended as of February the 24th. And wearing of masks in England is voluntary on transport and indoors and restaurants. And I went to a shop today and I was the only one who had a mask on, so it is changing quite substantially. The Quadrilateral will go ahead as planned, I'm delighted to say, and we in Maidenhead are ready to party and rock and roll. Now, I just want to mention a few programme notes, if I may. The full programme and costings are with your international contact. I'm sure they've all distributed those. All events are going to be based in Marlow, which you know, minimising travel and increasing friendship and opportunities. Hotel rooms need to be reserved before Easter. If we don't do that, the reserved rooms will be released back to the hotel. Now, one important thing is that cancellation of rooms at any time can be done up to 48 hours before the event. If you think you may be coming, please book your room now, because you can always cancel later within 48 hours. The other thing I would appeal for is that we do need your preference on Saturday free time options now, so that we can organise the bus transport. And that's all I want to say. And we will have a very warm welcome in Maidenhead for all of you to renew our friendships.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Very clear. Now we have Saint-Cloud.
Serge, tu peux faire ton partage d'écran?
Gianfranco, dai a Serge lo scuola.
Allez, bon, ok.
Here we are.
Okay.
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 C'est pas moi qui ai la main là.
Non, mais je le prends. J'ai cru que, que tu n'étais plus là, mais bon, je le fais. Joel Barber has been appointed assistant governor in charge of representing the governor in the Rotary Club of Saint-Cloud, Nanterre, La Selle, Saint-Cloud, Bougival, and Le Vésinet, west of Paris. Antoine, our incoming president, and Joel Barber, assistant governor, attend the seminar organizing. Alors, I just make it. Yes, organized by the incoming governor, Jean-Philippe Bord, on the theme of the role of the family in the Rotary. This year, the Rotary Saint-Cloud is sponsoring 2 Japanese students. They came on our weekly meeting to talk about their study in France in their respective schools of HEC and Sciences Po. Then they talk about Japan, their country. It was exciting. We also received another Japanese student who is studying at Sciences Po, humanitarian project management on the prevention of armed conflict, which is obviously a current topical issue of major importance. Several members from our club attended the concert in the beautiful amphitheater of the Sorbonne University, organized by our district for the benefit of the eradication of the polio. Several members from our club did the Rotary dictation contest organized for France and French-speaking countries with several levels of complication. This dictation was for the benefit of the fight against illiteracy. Through the year, but especially in autumn and winter, we organize our traditional dinners in the Rotarian families to get to know each other better and reinforce our links. Because of the COVID pandemic, we had to go back to Zoom meeting for weekly meeting. We had scheduled a humoristic show which had unfortunately to be cancelled because of possibly too few spectators to attend. During those weekly meetings, we are able to follow very interesting conferences on various topics such as Japan, the city of Venice, the wokism, the nuclear energy, the quick store business, Madame de Sévigné, the race car driving, the Saint-Cloud fire station organization. As several times during the year, we help l'Établissement Français du Sang, the equivalent of the NHS blood and transplant, to find donors and organize blood collection. We prepare the daffodils flower sales in different places of Saint-Cloud, shows, street, etc. The results are for the benefits of Curie Institute, specialized in concert. We also prepare the band sales for the benefit of several humanitarian associations of Saint-Cloud. The baker gave us the buns for free. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jean-Manuel. Now we have the news from Tivoli. I'm going to share the presentation. I will be very fast because I understand it's getting late. Okay. So I've been asked in the last meetings about the situation of our members because the has been told that some members were not here anymore and whatever. So we are 37 now. The members that left in the last year are Francesco Riccardi, Fabio Orcame, and Carlo Conversi. But actually, Carlo has been nominated as a honorary member of the club. New members, we have Paolo Paolacci and Enrico Tani, just to let you know the new entries of our club. What we have done in the last period, many of you know the Villaggio Don Bosco, which we support since maybe the last 40 years. We had a big fire in Tivoli, and all the town suffered quite a lot, but also the Villaggio had damages. So what we've done in August and in December, we arranged a fundraising, and we had also a virtual Christmas dinner, and we raised the funds for to help the Villaggio to go through these problems. We are still working on the project Connessi ed Inclusi, which is a project with the school in an area of Tivoli, and we are helping families and students with the connection and with the solution to have a digital ability. And this project is also with the support of the Club of Bonn, which we are very happy for their support. And we're going to end this project. It started in October of 2020, and this is going to end in June of this year with the end of the school period. And we have an ongoing project, but it's almost completed. We, with a global grant, with the Rotary International, and in partnership with the Rotary Club of Bamako in Mali and an association which is called Meno Mali, we arranged a school for small students, and the school opened in February 2022 and has a capacity of 60 students. We have a very short video that Gianfranco might show up, and it's very nice to see these students, just to see these students participating. This is the first day of school. Okay, thank you, Gianfranco. Okay, that's the news from our club.
Just a moment, I see the second one to show the internal of the school, Pietro.
We arranged all the furniture, and we are managing for the school, working for this 1 or 2 years in front. So the building has been done by Meno Mali, and we arranged the internal part. Okay, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure to see all of you. I don't know if is Arvea around.
Yes,
okay,
I'm here.
So first, I mean, I want to
Ciao,
thank
bello.
everyone. Thank you all the presidents and all the clubs. So it has been a real pleasure. And now, if anyone has questions, we are free to stay and interact.
I know Anthony wanted to ask a question. Are you there, Anthony?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, hello. Actually, I had perhaps two questions, Arvea. The first one was about China, and it was rejoicing to hear from you that China is taking a constructive approach of the fight against in favor of the climate and against CO2. Now, what we all know, though, is that they're also building coal-based power plants at a pretty high rate. So, you know, how is this compatible with our efforts in favor of climate?
Okay, the question is a question of energy matrix. You got first, the approach is this one. We got until a few years ago, 63% of the ratio, the quota of coal in power generation and electricity generation was 63%. It's now down to 57%, which is obviously not yet where it should be, because there should be absolutely no coal. But at the same time, you got a country that has a population of 1,400,000,000 people, and you got energy demand to support, which is a problem that we all have. And that's why, for instance, we as Europeans have got still a 61% on fossil presence. So the point is the roadmap towards the phase out of coal. And as you might remember, China was so close to unsubscribe for the first time in history in the Glasgow Declaration. There was a wording on the phase out of coal, which has never been there at any time in climate negotiations. Now, you might remember as well that in Glasgow for the final declaration, there was a sort of a surprise with Alok Sharma, and I witnessed that. Alok Sharma having called the assembly after a whole day of discussions among states, and being very happy that he wanted to, that he could have had this symbolic success. And then there was an intervention, surprisingly or not surprisingly, made by the Indians, because the issue of coal is an issue also for the Indians, but not only, because Germany has got a decent share, Poland has got a decent share of coal in power generation. The United States still have a coal presence in power generation. And the wording was softened. So what am I saying here is that when you talk about the division of the burden sharing, so to say, of who is going to have to do what and at what speed in reduction and mitigation, you have an historic responsibility. 50% of global emissions ever emitted from 70-85, sorry, from the Industrial Revolution onwards, have been produced by us, I mean, the Western countries. Then after the 50s, you started seeing an increased presence of different states, which were starting developing, because emissions are basically a measure of, let's say, the consumption level and the level of welfare of certain countries. And clearly, China has become the first emitter. The United States come right after that, and then Russia, I think, no, India, sorry, India is the third. But you also have to look at different parameters. For instance, that the United States are twice as inefficient in terms of energy intensity per unit of product. So and they're much more wasteful. Or so when we look at these numbers, we look at, and China's got a population which has got on average $10,000 US, I think, on average. Obviously, there are many rich people for income, available income for on average, whereas we got 40, 50, depending on the states in Europe. So the point is, you need to recognize globally, and I'm not only talking about China, but India, the poorer countries, that you got a right to develop as well. And that's the issue. And then you got how we achieve that objective. And there is a consensus, and it's not me, it's the international community, that the richer nations should become climate neutral by 2050. Countries like China, is acceptable that they managed to get there around 2060. What we need from China now, because we know everybody should do more, because we're not doing enough, is to accelerate what is called the emission peak, which should be way before 2030. And I also can tell you that the construction rate, if you look at the numbers, as I was saying, of what they've been building in terms of renewable capacity to replace traditional power plants, you will see that the efforts that they are making are pretty unbelievable, especially at scale. So the analyst, not me only, but even I think the International Energy Agency, which has got a roadmap done with them, with the Chinese government, everyone really thinks that they will surprise us in terms of accelerating, and even in the phase out of coal. The point is that you have to, it's like Poland. Poland needs to replace a significant ratio of coal in our system, in their system. And you need to accommodate all the social backlash of it. Shanxi province is a Chinese province which completely depends, or its economy completely depends on coal. And there has been a lot of resistance, like here in Europe, there has been a lot of resistance in some areas. So the contradictions are here, are there. Now we're coming to a time where we need to accelerate even more. Those contradictions can be solved together, because if they feel that they cannot trust for their energy security, because they cannot, for instance, replace coal with gas, which is what for them makes more sense, although gas is not the right choice, or they cannot build in peace their renewables, because there are geopolitical tensions, this is going to be an issue for us. So we need to exchange technology. We need to support each other in this effort. Otherwise, nobody's ever going to make it.
I have a question myself, Arvea. This is quite a huge problem. We know that. It involves worldwide organizations, governments, and so on. It's as single people, it's impossible to do anything. But Rotary, it's actually a worldwide organization. What can Rotary do about this problem? Is it a question of education? What actions can be taken?
Education is absolutely fundamental. Science, and this is important, facts, because this is an issue for democracies around the world now. Second is Rotary as a power of financial leverage in the investment of the Rotary Foundation. So there is a very important group of huge investors. I don't remember, but there are trillions in subscribed capital investments, and they are committing to net zero investments. So that could be definitely a very important leverage. ESG, environmental sustainability and governance, this trend in choosing. Think of what is happening nowadays. For the first time in history, Shell is leaving Russia. It took us, wow, it took us 50 years. this is the first time in history, and this economic power is very important. The other thing is Rotary has put the environment and climate for the first time in the mission of the Rotary Foundations as well. So probably a lot of more projects could be, and I was looking at the project that our friend Martin, I think he was speaking, sorry, I was on the mobile at that moment. Those are practical and they can have an impact. We have to think in small scale, like for instance, rewilding of cities, that's very powerful. So bringing biodiversity in cities, we can do it with schools even, or there's small projects. You don't need to build like towers or nuclear power plants or anything like that. And this has an impact on climate in cities because plants and green spaces can even cool down. Cities are going to become hothouses because cement and concrete absorb a lot of radiation. That could be really easy, or I mean, there are so many ideas that we all have and a lot of competence as well.
Thank you, Arvea. Really inspiring, really. Is there any other question? Because it's getting late, so I understand that it's time to close. The one question.
Yes, this was about the current crisis in Eastern Europe. If I understood you well, you were saying that because we're going to buy less or no gas from the Russians, in a way, this was a good thing because it would oblige us to move on to other forms of energy more quickly than we would otherwise have been able to or willing to. My objection, perhaps, is that if we are short of gas, we might be tempted to replace gas as an energy by oil, because there's plenty of oil around, and we'll have to to find the energy that we're lacking. So, is this a good thing or a bad thing to buy less gas from Russia?
Okay. I think it is a very good thing, and it's not, again, me. And as I said, I was talking to, I'm in Brussels, so I was also talking to, there are plenty of questions, okay? We're facing something that a lot of people weren't expecting, and probably did they even want to. There is a toolbox that is being put in place by the European Commission to face the short-term, let's say, emergency. And the very reassuring thing to say is that at least for the whole year, I mean, we're approaching the warmest season, there is no issue with storage. That's the first thing. The second thing is that obviously there are actions to be taken together in terms of, for instance, in Italy, for instance, we have a law. There is a law telling us that we should keep reserves to a certain level to face even situation of, conflict. We didn't do that because nobody was thinking strategically. And that's the difference between, for instance, the Chinese system, which thinks years ahead, and our democracies that think in terms of short terms and election cycles. So the Germans have, for instance, presented a new law accelerating their energy transition in these days. Vice Chancellor Habeck, the Minister for Economy, has said that the goal of 100% renewable capacity in the electricity generation is going to be achieved by 2030, which is earlier than he thought, that they thought originally. This is feasible. That's one thing. And a lot of effort has to be made at inter-European level in building up, for instance, interconnectors in the electricity grid to balance the grid, the European grid, which is something that we're already doing. Another thing is that we need to integrate other countries into the Green Deal. That means, for instance, that a lot of power generation can be built very fast in Africa, in the northern countries, in the desert, for instance, to feed in the electricity demand of Italy. And Terna, which is the operator, the TSO, the transmission system operator, that is the company, the national company that controls the infrastructure for the grid, is actually doing that. We're building an interconnection eventually after 15 years that it was planned to take electricity, clean electricity produced in Tunisia and feed in our grid. The UK, I think I hear that your accent is British. The UK has just invested into a cable, an submarine cable. It's about 4,000 kilometers or 5,000 kilometers from Morocco to take clean electricity from Morocco into the UK. The UK is planning to become a center for offshore production. And Scotland is able already to feed in its own system up to basically 100%. It's a question of feasibility. So what we need to do is to accelerate what we're already doing and do something else. You operate, as I said, you look at the major consumption areas, which are buildings and infrastructure, 35%. Then you got mobility, then you got industrial structures. And this is more or less what we have. You need to electrify everything you can electrify, build up very fast the capacities for generation. The Germans are doing that at scale. The Italians are slow. We got a law that simplified the authorization process, but we got a lot of resistance locally. And therefore is very sensible that we start looking into taking the electricity that can be produced in the desert, in the Northern African countries, integrating these countries as Morocco has been doing over the last 15 years into the European Green Deal. And this will also contribute to building a more peaceful situation for these countries, generating an alternative. Because if you tell these countries, you're not going to sell me Algeria oil anymore or gas, and you're going to be poor, I am not sure they're going to be happy with that. And that's why John Kerry, a couple of months ago, went to the Gulf and said, you will become exporters of green hydrogen or direct electricity. That is the effort. That is what we need to do. Then you're right, on a very short term, maybe, what happens is that it might be that, for instance, Germany is going to be an issue because Germany will have to make a choice in the short, medium term, because up to the summer, it's okay. Next winter, maybe. You will have to make a decision. Do they want to go and burn coal? We were not going to burn oil because our infrastructure is not made for oil. Our boilers are gas-based. You don't replace that. If you replace that,
we are quite out of time.
Yeah, but I'm very passionate, and I see the questions. I want to.
It has been an unbelievable experience, really. We really enjoyed it. I think we might need to spend more time in this matters. Really, thank you.
Buonanotte, ragazzi.
Oh, grazie. Veramente ottimo.
Grazie,
veramente interessante.
Grazie a tutti. Grazie a tutti. Grazie.
Grazie.
See you soon then.
Cheers.
Bye.
Okay, thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Ciao Maria.
Bye bye. Ciao Ettore. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, Ettore.
Ciao a tutti.
A tutti. Ciao Cristian.